Hi, and welcome to this video build log of the Millennium Master. I was out at the flight line the other day and saw a Millennium Master sitting out on the ramp, and I was impressed. The smooth lines, it just looked fast sitting still. So I went home, looked around, discovered that the Millennium Master was a fly zone model, had been released for a couple of years, and then it had recently just been rebranded in the Tower brand. Tower is one of the Hobbyco companies, as is Fly Zone, so that makes a lot of sense. And they had it a little sale and a little free shipping, and it just had to find its way to my house. Now, the Millennium Master model has got a 41-inch wingspan. It's about 39 inches long. It has what they call a 37mm 1000 kV motor, which basically, when I peeked under the cowling here, shows to be probably about a 3720, 3715, so it's kind of a pancake style motor. But the reviews for this model say it goes very nicely. It has a 9.4 or a 9x4 propeller that moves it right along 50 to 60 miles an hour. And some modelers have said that a 10x7E APC style prop will put it up there into the 65 to 70 miles an hour range. So that makes this a nice little snappy sport model. Well, let's turn back the clock and take a look at how this came in the box and how it went together. Now, I've discarded the heavy packing box that this model came in and the lid for this interior box. Neither of them had any marketing on it, just a plain white cover to this brown box. But as you can see inside, the foam pieces are mounted within racks in there. There were a couple of little supports that came across here that I've moved so that you can see inside. And then we've got the manual and the other plastic pieces here in a little box taped into the corner. And so everything looks like it's been packed very well. There's plenty of room so that it can jiggle a little bit without getting damaged. Let's take it out and take a look at it out on the table. As you can see, we've got everything laid out now, and there's really not too much to this. We've got the fuselage magnetic hatch opening up into the battery compartment. Nose wheels already attached here on the fuselage. We've got the wing servo lead coming out. It's kind of unusual. We've got servos in both wings, but one plug, so that they've wired the servos together. So if you were thinking about using a 6-channel radio and doing aileron differential, you're going to have a little bit of mechanics to do down there if that's what you want to do. We've got the tail surfaces that are just going to plug together, landing gear, spinner, a couple of loose ends. One of the things I thought was interesting is that they had pre-mounted the control horns and slid them into a little piece of foam, but they only did it to 2 out of the 3 that were included. So there's one control horn in the plastic parts to go on the other side of the horizontal stabilizer, and that may be, as we discover when we start putting it together, just to make it easier to get it on the back. So it looks like it'll go together pretty quick, so I'm excited. I'm going to spend a couple minutes with the instructions to make sure I know what's going to happen, and we'll get started in just a minute. Now, the first couple of steps includes getting the fuselage ready for the battery. This includes putting some Velcro down on the cockpit floor or on the fuselage floor here, and also then inserting a strap that'll wrap around the battery. So let's get that done. So we have the hook side of the Velcro. We're just going to pull the backing off, and then we see where the battery straps are going to come right there. So we're just going to lay it right down the middle. It's a nice long piece, so it'll give you plenty of room. To move your battery back and forth. Now, the kit comes with this black strip of kind of fuzzy material, and that's the battery strap. It's more smooth on the inside than on the outside, but there's enough of a grab there that allows the battery strap to grab onto itself and thus hold your battery in place. The instructions recommend dry fitting it to cut off enough so you don't have a lot of it flopping around there in the fuselage. I've done that. I took about 3/4 of an inch off, and then again, following the instructions, I just kind of rounded the end to make it easier to grab onto. So it's just a matter now of shoving it through the slot on both sides. Pull it through. You can see there's a little hard piece of plywood here to give it some strength so it doesn't just pull through the foam. And then there you have the battery strap on the inside with the Velcro floor there on the cockpit so that your battery can stay nice and tight. Now we're going to turn our attention to the wings. First thing is going to be to install the landing gear. Now the pictures show that the curved part of the gear door is facing aft. This is the aft side of the wing, and so we're just going to push it in, put a little support from underneath, and push it in there. Go to the other side, do the same thing. Not too difficult. So again, following the instructions, we're going to attach the wing to the fuselage. Notice, as I mentioned, the leads from the servos on the ailerons come together and are together behind some heat shrink here. So that's just one lead. So you just use one servo channel on this little airplane. We're going to poke it through the hole there in the fuselage. Nice big hole, goes together very easily. We're going to align the tabs in the front end of the wing with the receivers there in the fuselage. Continue to pull the wire through so we don't have any extra wire hanging down there. And then just push the wing into the saddle. Now the instructions say just to use this nylon bolt. Get it finger tight. And then just snug it up with a screwdriver. You're going into a receiver in there, it's a nylon bolt, so there's really not a huge need to really cinch it down. You don't want to strip either the receiver or the nylon bolt's threads, and so now we've got it looking pretty close to an airplane already with just a couple of steps. Well, the next step is to work on the empennage, and when you take a look at it, it becomes immediately apparent why that third control horn isn't on, because it's not open in the back. It's going to slide through, and that would have made it pretty tough with the control horn on. Never doubt the manufacturer. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that it fits. It looks like it does. Then I'm going to just pull it out just a little bit and add a little bit of CA along each of these ends so that it goes in tight. The center portion of the spike part of this locks all that together, and I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of CA on the interior of this. Now this is EPO foam, regular CA is fine. So let's take a moment and do that. Pull that through just a little bit for a little bit on the other side here that you can see. Flip it for a little bit on the bottom as well. Move that through. Got that all aligned in there nice and steady. Now before that CA has a chance to completely set up, I'm going to take a string. I'm just going to use right here the center line of the fuselage right where it stops at the canopy hatch, and I'm going to measure from that point to the tip of the horizontal stabilizer. I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to do the same thing over here to make sure it's the same length, and it is. That means I know that I've got this on a perpendicular angle, just a little bit from your geometry class. Next, I'm going to put a little bit of CA along the edge of where the vertical stabilizer fits so that I can have that in there nice and tight. Again, I don't need very much. There's not a huge amount of pressure on this, just a little bit to keep it from going anywhere. And I know from dry fitting that this little locking key fits pretty tight, so I'm just going to drop a couple little bit of CA there as it goes in so that it'll have that extra support. Okay, so now it's time to put in that last control horn. We've got that here, and it's just going to go through a little slot that's molded into the foam. Obviously, the control horns are on the bottom of the horizontal stabilizer. It's kind of tilted downward a little bit, a little anhedral in this particular model. And so we'll just kind of push it through. Get that control rod out of the way. There it is. And then we'll flip it over and put the retaining plate in place. So I have the retaining plate is just a little piece of white plastic. Looks like it's got a little I-beam cutout thing on it, and so we'll just drop it on top of that prong from the underside. Push it down on top. That looks good. And then to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, I'm going to put a drop of CA on it. You'll notice here in the fuselage that the control rods are connected to the servos using these little mini easy connectors. That's always a really good thing because it makes it so easy to align the control surfaces with their respective parts. So we're going to loosen these and then pull the rods out so we can get the connectors on the back done, and then we'll get it all aligned and then we'll tighten these back down. Makes it a real snap to get the alignment correct. So with the easy connector loosened, it's just going to be a matter here of bringing the control rod forward and then dropping it into one of the holes. It's the rudder. I'm going to use the middle hole, and then we can make some adjustments later when we do the measurements for the control throws. And then it's got this little keeper, so that we'll put the keeper on from underneath so that it doesn't fall out, and then snap it on to the control throw over here the way you found it as it came out of the box, just like that. So we've got that in there, it's secure, and then now we can move the rudder so that it's perfectly aligned with the vertical stabilizer, and then go back into the front, into the fuselage, and tighten down that mini connector. So I'm going to do the two on the bottom, and we'll be right back. Now with the flight controls connected, what I've done is added my radio and connected all the servo leads to the radio. If you use the Tactic 6-channel receiver that comes with the kit, or at least it did when I ordered it, you're probably going to be mounting it right up here or on the wall. That's what the instructions show. I was going to use a different receiver. I've got it mounted up here. It's a Spectrum compatible receiver with some flight stabilization on it. I wanted to give that a try. And so I have that mounted up here in the front. That resulted in my having to use a couple of 4-inch servo extensions to get the servo leads from the elevator and the rudder up to the front of the plane. If you're mounting your receiver right over the wings, you're not going to have to worry about doing that. Depending on the receiver you use, you may have to move things around just a little bit. But it all went together. It's 4-channel airplane. There's really not much to connect. And so that all went together very easily and very quickly. Now we're getting down to the home stretch. I checked the rotation of the motor when I had it powered up when I was binding my receiver. Did that with the propeller off, try to be safe. Messing with the receiver in setup mode with the propeller on is kind of an invitation for disaster. So we're done with that, so now it's time to put the propeller on. What we've got here is just a little friction-based collet. Fits over the end of the motor shaft. Fits in there nice. Next comes the back plate of the spinner. Then the propeller. The numbers on the propeller go forward. There's little tabs here on the plate that allow you to align the propeller easily. You don't have to guess where the holes for the spinner cover is. Then the washer goes on top of the propeller like that, and then the bolt. And we're just going to tighten that up by hand to get it up there. Nice and tight. Now it's time for a wrench. That's pretty good. And then we're just going to put the propeller spinner on. Fits into grooves in the back plate. Now there are two very little tiny screws. We're going to drop those in there. Just kind of lay them in the channel and then use the screwdriver to get them down into the hole, hopefully. We've reversed the propeller. We're working on that bottom hole now. And we're just screwing it in there nice and snug. Remember, you're screwing into plastic and you're just holding the spinner cover on. It's not like you're holding the propeller on. So it just doesn't need to be all that tight. Just nice enough to be nice and snug, and that the spinner cover fits the back plate nice. And so we're got it in good shape. As we're finishing this up, the next thing I'm going to do is just put on the decals. I've pulled the decal off the sheet, pulled the extra vinyl from around the edges. And what I like to do is just kind of cut a bit of the backing off on one end of it, and then that allows me to align it. And I'm just going to use the word Millenium along the top of the white edge there. And then I'm going to press down that part that had the sticky part exposed, and then I'm just going to slowly and carefully apply the decal as I roll it off its backing. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now the instructions have a pretty good outline of how to balance the airplane, especially the fore and aft CG. It describes the little break, a little bend in the wings right here, and it talks about putting a pin in the wing so you can hold it and balance it. I happen to have a little CG machine, so I'm going to use that instead. I've got the distance set to 51 millimeters, which is what the instructions called for. I've got the battery in the airplane, the prop on, everything the way I'm going to use it to fly. And so now it's just a matter of seeing whether I've guessed correctly where I've put the battery. And so I'm going to lay the airplane in on the CG machine, put it on the little supports, get it balanced side to side there. And there you can see, well, it looks like I guessed right. It looks like I might have it just a hair nose heavy, but that's okay. With a new airplane, a little bit of nose heaviness is not a bad thing. And then I can go back in and use a ballpoint pen or a felt tip marker and put a little line inside where one end of the battery is, so that the next time I go to fly with that same size battery, I can have it placed right and I don't have to worry about checking the CG each time. And now for a couple of closing comments. I made one modification to the canopy, and I do that with a lot of my airplanes. Because the magnets are so tight and they seal very well, if you're always pushing to lift it off the fuselage, you end up crushing the foam, or you end up getting a lot of fingerprints around that corner. And so what I try to do is, as you can see here, and let me zoom in, near where the magnets are, I like to put a strip of carbon fiber. You can use a popsicle stick, really anything firm. What I do is I just use my hobby knife and pull a little bit of the foam out, and then lay it in to make sure it fits. I use a little bit of Gorilla Glue or polyurethane glue, wet the carbon fiber, put it in there, tape it down because the Gorilla Glue foams and it starts to expand. And so then I've got these just two little nubs that I hope you can see that stick out. They stick about 2 millimeters, not very far at all. And then I had some paint here in the workshop that was almost a perfect match, so it's very difficult to see from the outside. So what that allows me to do when I've got the hatch on, instead of mashing the foam like that, I can either go from either side, or if my hand's big enough, just reach around, grab each of those two little tabs and quickly and easily lift up. So that way I'm putting the pressure on the tabs, not on the foam, and it just helps keep things neater and cleaner there in that back corner. Well, the airplane went together easily. There's just a couple of parts. Setting up the camera took way more time than actually putting together the airplane. Everything fit the way it was supposed to. Again, if you're using that tactic receiver or another receiver, that doesn't matter the orientation and where you mount it. Mounting it a little bit further back, you're not going to need to worry about the servo extensions that I had to use. But the typical modelers usually got a lot of extra stuff laying around the workshop. Let's take it outside. We'll do a little video walk around. I can't wait to get it out to the field.